Are you under pressure from regulators to bring the expanding footprint of the company's Office 365 environment into compliance? With more employees and companies enabling a remote workplace, are you experiencing an operational headache because of the rising IT costs and increased complexity of security policy adherence? Let me tell you a story about Walter. Walter is a security and compliance architect at a bank. The pandemic has proliferated the use of Office 365 applications from home and other insecure locations, causing company data to be flowing through insecure channels and uncontrolled storage devices. Regulators want all company data to be protected with encryption keys generated by a hardware security module, in addition to native encryption options provided by Office 365. Walter's company also needs to maintain compliance with the data security and privacy requirements of the financial industry, such as C5 and GDPR SCRIMS 2 verdict. The challenge increases multifold with several Office 365 tenant licenses, each with their own separate security operation management challenges. Walter thought of buying and managing an on-prem HSM to manage encryption keys. However, this approach is expensive, time-consuming, and requires deep security expertise, especially in this fast-changing security landscape. Non-functional requirements, such as high availability, could expand the cost and skill requirements even further. Walter needs to find a single pane of glass solution that is easy to operate, compliant, highly secure, and most importantly, can manage encryption across the enterprise. What should Walter do? The setup would require Walter to create a Microsoft customer key, one for each application that is part of the Office 365 environment. For example, Outlook on Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, etc. Each customer key requires 2 times encryption keys in Azure. Walter's company will require about 60 different key stores and a little more than 9,000 keys for complete coverage. Walter does some research and learns about IBM Cloud HyperProtect crypto services with Unified Key Orchestrator, which can help manage all of these encryption keys from one single pane of glass. HyperProtect crypto services with Unified Key Orchestrator can also help Walter effectively manage dev, test, and production environments and any company assets in other cloud environments such as AWS, GCP, etc. HyperProtect crypto services with Unified Key Orchestrator provides a unified experience that helps enterprises meet their compliance control obligations. It hides the complexities and differences across different key store implementations and helps reduce risk of incorrect key usage. A tiered pricing model also reduces the complexity and cost of managing multiple key management systems. With the Keep Your Own Key technology, Walter's team will have full control of the company's encryption keys in the cloud. Even IBM Cloud administrators have no access. HyperProtect Crypto Services provides a single-tenant key management service with key vaulting provided by dedicated, customer-controlled cloud HSMs. The service is built on FIPS 140-2 Level 4 certified hardware, the highest commercially available level of security defined in this industry. The specific problem that Walter is trying to address is illustrated in this diagram. What we are seeing is a use case from a large bank in Europe. In 2020, this business had thousands of customers working remotely due to COVID-19. Because of this, they had a lot of sensitive data in Office 365. They needed an easy way to manage thousands of encryption keys and vaults. Furthermore, regulators wanted the bank's data to be under the control of the bank, not managed by Azure. This bank evaluated other hyperscalers. They considered purchasing and operating physical HSMs, and they considered HyperProtect crypto services with Unified Key Orchestrator as a SaaS solution. Ultimately, they went with IBM Cloud HyperProtect crypto services with Unified Key Orchestrator, which has enabled them to stay compliant with regulations. they are able to reduce complexity by managing all of their encryption keys through a single pane of glass. And all of this is done as a managed service to them. In the next few minutes of this video, we will walk you through the use case. To keep it simple, we will only talk about data in Outlook on Exchange Online. First, let's look at the Azure side, specifically the Azure tenant. You want to check and make sure that you have Global Administrator and Compliance Administrator privileges assigned to your user. For this scenario, we will need 2 subscriptions that we use to host Azure Key Vaults. Sometimes the subscriptions you just created do not immediately show up. In this case, you can select them by clicking the Directories and Subscriptions button and then select them from there. Remember to take a note of the subscription IDs when completed. After the subscriptions are created, let's create 2 Azure Key Vaults in these subscriptions respectively, 1 in each subscription. We'll start with subscription 1. Let's follow the same steps to create another Azure Key Vault. This time, we choose Zcat Demo 2 as the subscription. From all the resources list, you can find the 2 key vaults created. Now, let's create 2 service principals for access control. Remember to take note of the application IDs when each service principal is created. For each service principal that we created, we need to add a client secret to it. Again, remember to note down the secret value when the client secret gets created. Repeat these steps to create another service principal. And then, let's authorize the first service principal we created to the Azure Key Vault. Repeat these steps to authorize the other service principal to the other Azure Key Vault. Next, we will create an Azure Key Store in IBM Cloud HyperProtect Crypto Services with the Unified Key Orchestrator and connect the Key Store with the Azure Key Vault that we created earlier. Before you do so, make sure to provision and initialize your HyperProtect Crypto Services instance and create a vault to assign key stores and keys. In HyperProtect Crypto Services, both keys and key stores need to be assigned to a vault for access control. Finally, to link the Azure Key Stores to the Unified Key Orchestrator, create an Azure Key Store in HyperProtect Crypto Services with Unified Key Orchestrator using the same credentials that were created for ZCAT Demo 1 app. Repeat these steps to create another Azure key store in the HyperProtect Crypto Services instance and connect to the other Azure Key Vault. Let's create a key in the Unified Key Orchestrator Azure Key Store, which corresponds to the first Azure Key Vault. Now, let's switch to the Azure portal. Check and make sure that the first key has been created in ZCAT Demo 1 Key Vault. Repeat the steps to verify if the second key has been created in ZCAT Demo 2 Key Vault. Now we will need to request a customer key for Microsoft Office 365 through the Microsoft Fast Track portal. Note that Office 365 E5 or later is required. After your request is approved, follow through with Microsoft Fast Track team via email to run all of the suggested commands. These commands will prepare the two Azure Key Vaults for customer key setup. After customer key setup is complete, create a data encryption policy or DEP per the command line shown on the screen. Access to data in Office 365 is dependent on the health status of the DEP, which is in turn determined by the two encryption keys we created in the HyperProtect Crypto Services and pushed to Azure Key Vault. First, let's confirm the DEP is healthy to begin with. To test our use case, let's deactivate the two keys we created earlier in the Azure Key Stores in HyperProtect Crypto Services with Unified Key Orchestrator. Then, go back to the Azure Key Vault. As you can see, both keys are disabled automatically on Azure as well. Now let's run the command again to check the DEP status. As you can see, by disabling keys, the DEP status changes to unhealthy. Once the DEP becomes unhealthy, the data encrypted by the two keys from HyperProtect Crypto Services will become inaccessible. Thanks to HyperProtect Crypto Services with Unified Key Orchestrator, Walter is now able to get Office 365 data stored in Azure data centers under regulatory compliance. Thank you for watching. To learn more about HyperProtect Crypto Services, as well as other IBM Cloud HyperProtect services, please visit our homepages.